Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today, live from Las Vegas, Sean Cunningham from Fox 40. What's going on, Sean?
Hi, James. Feels like we haven't done this in a while. Been kind of busy, but excited to talk to you and Brenden. All the things happening in Vegas, and I think Brenden, he's getting a different side of me in this environment. So I think that's a good thing, but it's bringing us closer together.
Oh, we have male bonding going on. Of course, joining us as well, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you? Is your liver okay? That's always my question when hanging out with Sean for multiple days.
Yeah, it's been fine. I actually got one of those like large sweet drinks yesterday. I don't exactly know what to call them.
Oh no, a yard of whatever. Yeah, that's a bad
and
idea.
Sean talked me into getting one size larger than I originally planned.
Yeah,
and it wasn't actually the alcohol content; it was all the sugar that I actually felt my head and just kept saying I did not feel drunk enough to not be feeling good, but I'm doing fine.
Can I point out one thing though? Brenden went to the I guess that's the frozen margarita daiquiri, whatever it is, very masculine drink, and he went up to the guy and said, he's like, oh yeah, you get to choose your own flavor, right? So he's like, oh cool, give me the last 4, like as if he's some child doing a suicide drink at a soda machine, just little this, little that, little this one, and I looked at him, I was like, dude, what's wrong with you?
Who am I with?
Yeah, I was like, sure, I'll try one. How about strawberry and pina colada? He's just like, yeah, can we add blue, red, pink? I mean, you had like 5 flavors in there. It was amazing.
Yeah.
No wonder you got a headache.
When I was in Mexico, they called that strawberry daiquiri and pina colada mix a Miami Vice. So I don't know. That's what they call it. That's what the kids call it nowadays, I guess. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys are okay and you've survived. So
I think Brendan's new term for me was legend, wasn't it? Something like legend.
Whoa, Sean! Nobody called you a legend. Let's
Somebody
calm down.
I can't remember which one it was, but
it definitely was not me. It might have been our Uber driver.
You can talk about that. I am definitely setting the bar for you to follow, though, right?
Sure. Yeah, okay. That's a fine way to put it. Yeah.
Legend. In order to reach legendary status, you have to climb the rock wall like Jason Jones did with us a few years back, which was a spectacular story.
He didn't get very far, but
I don't think he actually got off the ground.
The shoes came off though.
The struggle is real. Jason Jones came in like a wrecking ball. He was just kind of swinging there on the wall. All right, so let's get to the business side. If you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Our last YouTube show went over 500 thumbs ups, so that's cool. If you need to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you don't mind, that would be great. We did break 3,000 subscribers. Now it's the march to 5,000. So it's one of those things we got to keep promoting. Also jump on board with the Kings Beat. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber, especially right now with the chaos that is social media. I don't know what in the world is going to happen here in the end. And it's just wild and ridiculously stupid. But if you go to the Kings Beat, you sign up for the Kings Beat, at least you'll get all of our content just sent right to your inbox, and you won't have to go on one of these platforms that's lost its mind and try to find our stuff. So that's another reason why you should jump on board with the Kings Beat. Sacramento Kings have gone to Las Vegas. They've gone 1-1 in the first 2 games. It has been hideous basketball. I got to be honest. It has not been good at all. The offense has really struggled. The defense has been strong, but the offense has been all over the place in the first 2 games. And before we jump in fully to all of that, number one, do you guys have an update on Nemi?
Just foot soreness. There's no shoot around on the second days of back-to-backs. So I had heard that he's wanting to play. We'll see how that kind of transpires. I wouldn't expect him to play today, especially with the back-to-back. Give him an extra day, and then maybe see what happens with the other game against Minnesota. I believe it is on. Is that Wednesday or no? That's
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah. So, yeah, man, we'll see.
Okay, Brenden, you haven't heard anything?
No, nothing outside of what Sean just sort of laid out. I thought it was pretty notable. I mean, he never came back out after whatever the exact moment was. I tried to go back and watch the film, and it's really hard to determine exactly where it happened. But no, nothing outside of what Sean said. And I'd imagine that, anybody that has a small thing, you don't risk it. But Neemi's situation is weird with his contract.
Yeah, it's definitely strange. Okay, so but now I'm going to get to the other side, because while you guys were there in person watching it unfold, first of all, Isaiah Thomas was Isaiah Thomas on the broadcast. He was all over the board. He didn't know Queta's name at one point, even though they had already mentioned him like 6 times before that. He tried to call him Quota at one point. That was a mess. And then one of the plays near the middle of the second quarter, Nimi went down, and I think he blocked a shot. He got called for a foul, but it looked like a clean block on a breakaway. And it was at that point that his partner on the broadcast, which I don't know who his partner is, I don't know who she was, said that Neemias had just signed a 2-way contract for that year after being on a 2-way the previous 2 years with the Sacramento Kings. I have not been able to get that confirmed, but that was something that was spoken on the broadcast. And I don't want to talk about the back and forth on that, but as to whether that's accurate or not.
Yeah, they also had Monty McNair on the broadcast, did they not?
They did have Monty McNair on the broadcast. They did not bring him up, from what I could tell.
Interesting.
They did ask it, like Isaiah Thomas did ask about how his owner was. It was a wide-ranging, strange interview.
Just pointing out for people who don't know, it's summer league for everybody. These are people who aren't usually doing broadcasts, as you probably could guess. So that's what a lot of these people do. They bring in a lot of people that don't have that type of experience and aspire to do that, and probably have made significant movement towards getting to that next step. So you do it with officials, you do it with executives, broadcasters. This is just summer league for everybody.
Officials.
Right, the officials, officials. Yeah, the officials were a little odd. I mean, like you did have a lot of new people. They're trying to. It's good though, because the league needs a new group of officials coming up. They need to, continue to get younger and continue to grow and to get past like what I think was an era where like there was specific star treatment and stuff like that. And maybe we can get that out of, like, bring new people in and push some of that out. Yes, Brenden?
There was a moment last game where they just announced that the Kings lost 1 point and did not explain why. And Alvin Gentry was very confused.
Well, and it had just happened. They had, there was a replay where they took points away from Colby Jones, Colby Jones, who had stepped out of bounds at one point during his shot, and they had credited. And then, like 5 minutes later, they're like announcing another, and they're taking more points away from the Kings. And he's just looking around, he looks right at Steve Ballmer. Gentry's on court side and Ballmer's on the baseline. He looks over at Ballmer and Jerry West in that area of this Clipper, regime. And he's just like, "You're just going to take points away from us now?" As if it was their fault.
There was a bunch of strange things that were going on. Like even the Colby Jones thing, he hit a 3, right? And then that got pulled off the board later.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was at 20 and all of a sudden he wasn't at 20. And at the California Classic, I'll say this too. There was a point where I tweeted out that Neemias Queta had just got a double-double. He had 10 points and 11 rebounds. He finished that game with 9 points and 9 rebounds. And I don't know how that happened, because I watched him hit the free throw that put him at 10 points. There was no question. And then all of a sudden he didn't have 10 points anymore. And I'm like, what in the world just happened?
At Golden One Center, that actually did happen a few times during the season, where rebounds were mysteriously taken away at some point. Maybe they were credited earlier and somebody went back and looked and that's not a rebound, or I don't know. But Yeah.
Rebounds happen that way. Points don't typically happen that way.
Points don't happen that way.
Once someone gets to double figures, they're in double figures. They don't go backwards. Yeah. So you guys talked to Nemi. Brenden, you had Nemi on a pod. But like, where's his head at? Because it sort of seemed like he's kind of like, it is what it is. I'm just kind of in a holding pattern.
Yeah, I mean, Nemi said, of course you want to be comfortable, but that he's just trying to not really think about it, to go out there, and he views this as a good opportunity to show what he can do at this level. So that was kind of most of what he said. And when he was asked specifically about how he thinks a two-way could benefit him, I thought he had a good answer of, it's sort of all about perspective, but I got the impression that like he thinks he's ready.
Yeah.
Did you get that same feel, Sean?
Well, and it's interesting because when we were about the foot thing, like it's a little confusing to me as to why he's here. He's had, I think he's played the role nicely. I think he's progressed nicely, and I don't think there's really anything that anybody will see in Summer League that will make you change your mind on Neemias Queta. I think where he's at in his development. Certainly, there's more room to grow. I just don't think that playing in Summer League helps his development, or because it's not like they're having him do anything any different than what they have in Stockton already. And I think for him, his first year was kind of a wasted season, as we've kind of chronicled here on this podcast over the last year or so. And this past year was exactly what you wanted to see from him in that next state, especially with what he was able to do at the G League level. And I think he passed that with flying colors. There's certainly more room to grow, but I feel like he did enough. He has enough accolades. They won during the season. Obviously, the playoff was a little wonky, but he did what I feel was the next step in his progression. Now, I think to see that come full circle and see that go to the next level, what's the evolution there? Well, it's to see him play an NBA game. And unfortunately, really, the Kings don't have that. And maybe they do, but maybe in my opinion, I don't look at him as saying he's ready for rotational NBA minutes, at least with the Sacramento Kings. Now, how do you see that then? Could it be a younger team that doesn't quite have the aspirations that the Kings do? Maybe, but I would like to see him at the NBA level and get some rotational minutes, whether it be on a good team or a bad team. Obviously, the Kings would like to keep him on the team in some form or fashion, or at least have control over him in a way, because they think that he can help. And there's still maybe some sorting of some opinions out, but I don't think that they're done with him. They want to see more development. I just don't see how Summer League assists that development, if that makes sense. Like, I don't see that anything coming from Las Vegas or the California Classic that makes you really come to a conclusion on what Neemias Queta is all about.
Yeah, and I'll say too, like the issue that I have is that when they've used him correctly in the Summer League, he's looked dominant. When they don't use him correctly, you have to watch very closely. I think he's run the floor extremely well. He's hustled. He's had chase down blocks. I think he's been exceptional in the pick and roll. I'm watching him on the defensive end be able to play both players on the pick and roll. His screens are incredible still. Like he would be there. Like his screen assist numbers are off the charts. The way he opens up space. And I'll also tell you this, like he's clearing space in the key for his teammates to get a bunch of rebounds. So I know a lot of people are like, I need to see him go out there and grab like 18 boards in a game. No, it's about winning the rebound battle overall. And he's doing enough to open space where Colby Jones, had 5 rebounds in the first like 3 minutes of the game, because Neemias had taken all of the other players out of the key. So I think that there's a lot of things that he's doing right. But I also understand what you're saying, Sean. Like they're kind of in limbo. Is he a 4A player? Can he be a rotational player? Can he find his way to the main roster? They only have 13 roster spaces taken up right now, so they still have 2 spots, but it kind of feels like they've wanted him to take the 2-way. And I'm not sure what exactly that the plan is here with him. We've pushed a little bit here and there. even like trying to get an answer as to whether he had been signed to a two-way contract or not. And also like explain to people who don't understand. Right now, he has a cap hold as if it's a regular cap hold with a regular roster, but he had signed his qualifying offers for a two-way contract. So if he accepts a qualifying offer, he gets a two-way contract. It's $550,000 right around there. And he would, step right back into the role where he can play up to 50 games with the main team, but he'd bounce back and forth between the G League and the main roster. I just don't know what the Kings have in store for him, especially after signing Alex Len back. So in my opinion, I would like to see Neemias be the backup to the backup, be the big man backup behind Trey Lyles. So when Sabonis gets in trouble, but you're playing against a Steven Adams or you're playing against a Jokic or an Embiid, you can throw a big body out there, at least early in the season. And if he can grow into the role, that's one thing. If he can't, then you use Alex Len like you did last year later in the season. I just don't know that the Kings are going to do that. And so I'm confused as you guys are, as far as like nobody really has an answer as to what he's going to be on this roster, or if he's going to be on the roster, or if he's going to be a two-way again. I just think it's kind of like it's all up in the air still, and kind of interesting.
I do think there's I see how people could say there's a overlap between what Len and Nemi provides. And Nemi knows. I asked him, what do you think you provide most at the NBA level? And he's like, obviously it's the size and intangibles, but also there's a difference offensively in the way that Nemi runs that DHO game more than Len does. And Nemi said throughout this offseason back home that he really worked on his ball handling, and whether that be in the DHO game or in post-ups or sometimes bringing the ball up the floor after a board. So I do think there is a difference in those guys offensively, even if, they can have their similarities in just being one of those ginormous fives out there that is a rim protector.
Yeah. And the rim protecting has been great. I think the defense has been great overall from him. Again, the chase down block yesterday was crazy before he got injured. So we'll have more on that as we get more information. If there's a point where we fully understand what's going to happen, we'll send it out. I was expecting maybe to see something in the last couple of days, whether it's a press release or whatever. But, for that matter, we still haven't seen Sasha Zenkov's press release. So officially he hasn't, I think he's signed, but I'm not sure.
He has not signed yet.
Okay.
It is not a, there's a lot of hurdles that have to be kind of cleared from my understanding. And he has left Las Vegas. So, but everything is still right. It's just, it's a delay. There's a delay in getting some of these things accomplished. And this is something that, you might be seeing in a press conference sometime next month.
Okay. Yeah. And it seems like maybe we'll get some of these other guys. I mean, we did see the numbers. They finally came out. I think we have the numbers for Domantas Sabonis. They're very similar to what we talked about initially. But he got I think it's an $8.6 million raise onto his contract, puts him at like 30.6 for this season, and then really close to 8% raises. I think it's interesting. The Kings it negotiated in was the exact same thing that was negotiated into his original contract, which are obtainable, highly obtainable, like bonus money. So it's 2.6 million every year of the 4-year extension, where if he makes an all-star team, he gets $1.3 million bonus. If he makes an all NBA team, he gets a $1.3 million bonus. So it's up to 2.6 million every year. That's really cool, because that's a team saying, okay, we want you to keep betting on yourself, and a player saying, I'm okay with that. So I don't know. It'll probably work out very similar to the way it did this last year, although the all NBA thing is going to be difficult to, make every single season. But still, I think like he's putting some onus on himself to go out there and accomplish these things. And that's a good thing, to leave goals and to leave monetary goals out there for yourself, and, things that are obtainable that you've obtained in the past, but to continue on the same trajectory that you were before. Was there anything else with the contract stuff that you guys had questions on? Because we've had Trey Lyles under contract now. Alex Len is officially signed. PJ Dozier was let go. So the third point guard position is open. Go ahead, Brenden.
I think for Harrison Barnes, for me, like I'm curious if it's even every year, if it's front loaded, if it's back loaded. No clarity at this point, but that's something I'm curious about.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, Brenden, because I think the way that, like, if you go look at most of the websites now, like the Sport Track, whatever, however you want to say it, but they have him at 17, 18, and 19 million. And they don't give their sources themselves. So I don't know if they got that from somebody, that his contract for this year, but I'm gonna want to make sure that that's 100% accurate, because like the way that it looked last week was that the Kings still had, up until the point that they signed Trey Lyles, they roughly had $5 million in cap space, and they could have even got a little bit higher than that. Like, so they were around 5 million. And then once they signed Trey Lyles, his cap hold of 3.4 million goes to like roughly an $8 million salary, and all of that money goes away. So once a player is signed that you're using bird rights for, it eats the cap space that you have. Up until the moment that you sign him, you can still use that cap space. So I'm wondering, like, again, we hear right now that like Sabonis's money was about $1,900,000 more. So that would drop you down to like 4 million. And then I'm wondering if there wasn't another player like, again, like a Trey or like a Harrison Barnes that the Kings did front load and just eat up the rest of that cap space for this season. So then they'll have more as we go on. So I want to see the numbers first before we fully get into it. And like all the numbers. So it can be slightly complicated. There's also, let's just hit the other situation there we were talking about. PJ Dozier. Are you guys at all surprised that PJ wasn't brought back?
No, I'm not surprised.
Brenden?
I don't know. I like PJ. I don't know this, but I thought that there maybe was something between himself and Jordy, having spent time together previously in Denver. I don't know. Not super surprised. I wouldn't have been shocked either way. I really think is what it comes down to. But now you have another hole there.
Okay, so Kings have 2 roster spots. Do you guys have any feeling on what you would do if you were in that situation?
Well, I mean, for me, it's. I think I would echo what a lot of fans have been wondering. It's like, where's your rim protector? Where's your rebounding? But you look at the crop of players out there, and I don't really think, in my opinion, that it really truly exists. And obviously fit is going to be the biggest thing, but I would imagine one of those players will be a big, and maybe that part of the calculus and trying to determine what you're going to do with Neemias Queta. But I will say, like, you were asking about salary cap a second ago, James, and I it's so interesting to see what is happening with the NBA. I used to think the NBA's best strength from their Players Association, the way everything's collectively bargained, is the guaranteed contracts. And now you're starting to see contracts that are very much like the NFL. Not a lot of guarantees, and so PJ was kind of a casualty of that. It wasn't surprising. It was, and even because it was such a small amount of money, I think that allow him to try and go and get a payday. And hey, if the market isn't right and you haven't found what you're looking for, there's no reason why he won't be around in a training camp invite. Possibility of maybe you don't think he's a piece on your rotation, and who knows, maybe something else shakes out. But I think they'd probably have their eyes on some other possibilities at the moment, and just kind of clearing up that money, as the money is kind of, as you mentioned, James, kind of dwindled down some to almost nothing. Like, can't be afraid of going over the cap, because all good teams do. And there's for anyone, we mentioned Sasha Vezenkov a minute ago. Yeah, it's not a done deal yet. It will get done. It will get done. He's got a jersey ready for him. He's going to be wearing number 7. So there's but once that, you have to have things happen first. You have to get official first. So maybe some of that is being held up as well. But yeah, 2 roster spots. Summer league's not over. I mean, there's guys out there that are have been impressive, and others that haven't. And there's gonna be a lot of movement and people getting training camp invites and overseas invites, and people have to kind of shore up their teams a little bit. So a lot of competition still left to be had, and I think maybe you kind of have to get through summer league and see how some of these contracts get thrown out to some of these players.
Yeah, I think just to lay out like hypothetical scenarios that I think would be intriguing to me, like say TJ Warren was one of your minimums to give you a little bit more wing depth. You bring Neemias Queta on a guaranteed contract, and then you give Jordan Ford the 2-way, and that's your point guard depth there for the 3rd string. I think that could be something interesting. Or maybe you go with somebody like Howell Neto and somebody like there's still, I believe, Bismack Biyombo or Willie Hernan Gomez, and then you look towards Neemias Queta getting that last 2-way if he's willing to accept it. So I think there's different ways to go. I do have a lot of interest in Jordan Ford being that last 2-way, though, I will say.
Yeah, it's something that I've talked about for a little while, that like, why not? Why not use the 2-way in order to fill the backup, the 3rd string point guard position? Because if you need him, you just pull him up, and then you've got him up there. And, even still, we all know that Malik Monk is going to be the backup point guard for the most part. And especially with Chris Duarte gives you the opportunity to put a player next to, if you've got to start Davion, you can put Monk at the starting point guard position, Duarte alongside him off the bench, and you can keep going, right? So I think the depth is good there. And you even have, Colby Jones or Keon Ellis that you can maybe feed a little bit of minutes if you had an emergency type situation. But like I've been on kind of, whether it's Jordan Ford or it's someone else like him that's young enough to take a 2-way and it can be part of that system. That seems to make a lot of sense to me. And then we have I like what you're saying though, Brenden, because what you're saying is that like that those last 3 spots, they might, one spot might determine what you do with another spot. And so it's possible that Neemias Queta does get a 2-way, and then he's got to be that other spot. And then you have 2 roster spots that you can work with. And then like the only thing the Kings can sign right now is they can sign league minimum contracts. But, we just saw with Alex Len, a league minimum contract for Alex Len is $3.2 million. It's not like it's nothing. So guys with 10 years of service, $3.2 million is right around what you make. So yeah, I think that they're going to be pretty aggressive here at the back end and try to fill those last couple of spots. And maybe they'll only fill 1 roster spot and leave 1 open, because that allows you again to make moves down the road if you need to make a 2-for-1 trade, and that way you don't have to waive a player. You don't have to find a taker for someone else's contract. So I could see them doing a partial guarantee. I could also see doing a couple of camp invites and seeing how players fit in, and then going from there with their last 2-way spot. So definitely some interesting stuff. And again, if Neemias just takes the qualifying offer, he's taking the 2-way. He's not taking a main roster spot, or he would have already done that, I believe. Is there anyone that stands? Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I think that it's worth noting that Harry Giles is eligible for 2-way, and Sean got a little look at him yesterday.
Yeah, how did that go, Sean?
Yeah, it was. Wandering off to a middle school in the suburbs of Las Vegas to watch Harry Giles and Dion Waiters, and it's basically an agency workout. Jariah Horn was there as well, and you've got about 9 teams showing up to take a look at these guys, and Kings weren't one of them, but that's okay. There's a lot of teams that will share intel, and they can always bring somebody in for a private workout. It's not that big of a deal. And the other thing is everybody's here. It's like I was on the radio earlier today and kind of talking about the growth of what summer league is, and it's unrecognizable from years ago. Like you think about late 2000s compared to, or early 2000s or even late 2000s, like 07, 06, compared to where we are today, where Vegas just becomes the hub of all things basketball, not just the NBA. I mean, you've got so much going on here. The NBA, every team is here. All business gets done here. Partnerships gets done here. Broadcasting, you've got an NBA convention that's happened this year. You've got summer league sellouts. You've got ratings are higher than ever, and yeah, Victor Wembanyama is a huge part of that. But also, you have these private workouts where teams can go and kind of kick the tires on somebody like Dion Waiters, who's 30, 31 maybe, who can still shoot lights out. But last time we saw him in the NBA, he had a body closer to mine than an NBA player, and yeah, he looks bad. He looks better, but he can still shoot. But to Harry Giles, yeah, he still looks like Harry Giles, man. Like he's 25 years old, and I've got about a 20-minute interview I did with him, sitting down with him. I was the only one to really talk with him. And I wanted to get it up yesterday, but the day kind of got away from me. But I'll have it up later today. I'll have a little bit of a snippet, and yeah, I've got some footage. I think people will be pleasantly surprised. And we talk about not only, I was like, dude, was there ever a part where you're just like, this isn't going to happen for me? Like basketball's over. And we kind of go down that road a little bit. And the motivations for him trying to fuel this back up again. And a lot of it has to do with an opportunity that exists because his agent, Daniel Hazan, Jason Tatum, and the Players Association found a way to create the Harry Giles rule, which is a guy who, because of injury or because of, James, what was the word we would always hear? Rehabilitation. When you see the injury report, like he would basically be just sat out so he could get better, but it wasn't
rehab
really
and rehabilitation. Yeah.
So stuff like that, to where he's on the roster. He has years of experience at that moment or at that point, so he loses out on the ability to go and have like a two-way contract. So now when teams are able to add a third two-way contract, and for someone like Harry Giles, and it have this rule now to where even despite his years of service, because of the injury, now he's eligible to have a two-way contract again, even at 25. So I think he will end up in a two-way contract. I do believe that. I think it's such a low risk, high reward situation for any team, particularly a young team that just needs to find a lightning in the bottle. Maybe it's not the Kings because of the fact of where they are in their trajectory as a franchise and what they aspire to do. They need maybe somebody a little bit more proven, but man, it's always fun because it'll warm your heart if you're a Kings fan, because Kings fans have such a relationship with Harry Giles because of his electric personality and what he means to success of or just chemistry of a team, and what he had such a bind with the fans, and he hears from them every single day, and just he's like, yeah, I didn't play there long at all, but they love me. And him showing up at Game 7 and riling up the crowd, and he was a whole vibe there during that playoff series, or that playoff game. So yeah, it's a lot to talk about. It's fun. He looks really good. He's healthy, he says, and he talks about the unceremonious exit from the Kings, which still stings to this day for him. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Harry Giles.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the rule originally was that you can only sign a two-way contract if you're in the first 3 years of, like, if you've played 3 years in the league, and that can be even at the G League level. If you're 3 years in, after the third year, you can't go and get another contract, another two-way contract. And you're right, Jason Tatum stepped in and helped his friend get that rule changed. And so now basically it's an injury exception that will allow a player who's been through, who's had 4 years of NBA experience, actually go back and be part of the two-way system. And like the two-way system matters greatly because a standard G League contract, I think is still around $70,000, and you can get a nice bonus from a team for going to training camp. You can get $100,000 or $150,000 going through training camp. And then if you get cut, you go to the G League and you have that money and then your salary there. But a two-way contract is half of a league minimum salary, which is $1.1 million this year. So it's $550,000. And I'm pretty sure they're guaranteed, but they don't come out of the main salary for a team. so they don't count against your payroll. So you can like waive two-way players all year long. You can keep signing two-way players and giving them $500,000, having them, get their time in with your big club, and then waive them and sign someone else to that position. But I still think it's a really nice gateway to get someone back into the league. Yeah. It's a good tool to get a player who's not quite there yet, maybe like Anemi was last year, who hadn't put up the big numbers at the G League level, to go and maybe bounce back and forth, get experience with both. And like for me, I would love to see Neemias Queta, like you talk about Harry, but Neemias Queta, I want to see him in training camp. I want to see him go up against Alex Len and Domantas Sabonis and Trey Lyles every day, because those all three are totally different players that would help him grow even further and just intensity. So,
and in fairness to Queta, like that happened last year. They were able to use Nemi a lot in practice and training camp, and he would play games in Stockton. My thing is, I would like to see him play exhibition NBA games. I would like to see him play some sort of rotational minute, to see if he's capable of doing that at the pro level. And I have my doubts that it can happen with the Kings right now, but would really, really like to see him one way or the other, be it in Sacramento or elsewhere, to see him actually play some sort of meaningful minutes, or just log NBA minutes as a true two-way type player. And certainly last year he got a huge dosage of that. You remember, like his first year, he was around the team a lot and didn't play in Stockton nearly enough. I thought that was in my opinion, I thought it was a little bit of a waste, but it paid dividends in the second year. He was ready to go. Having a second summer league and exhibition schedule and training camp and all that kind of stuff, and then to actually go and do that and do what he did at the G League level was really impressive. So for me, I just feel like the next step for him is to see, can you do it even at the minimal of the NBA level?
Yeah. Brenden, I'm going to hit you with this. You've been watching the California Classic. You've been watching Summer League there in Vegas. Is there anyone else on the Kings roster that stands out to you that you're like, I'm intrigued, that, like whether it's something that they're doing, or even if it's, Colby Jones having a big breakout season, if it's a big breakout game, if it's Keon Ellis, like finding himself after being lost. Kessler Edwards seems to have still like been really hit and miss. But is there anyone else that you've kind of like circled and said, hey, I like this player?
Probably Mike Daum.
I knew you were going to go
just for Moke. Mike Daum is 2 years older than me. I mean, Nemi has done a lot for me these last two games. I know he went down maybe early in that second quarter, but between that fourth quarter and the first in yesterday's game against the Clippers, a little bit of that second, like I thought he was really good. And he had his moments in Stockton too, but he was fairly up and down. Like I kind of joked after that first game, like imagine if you just walked into the gym at the start of that fourth quarter, you'd be like, who the heck is this guy? But those first three quarters, he was pretty underwhelming. And that's kind of the Neemias Queta experience. So he's been a little up and down for me. Outside of that, I think
hang on. I want to mention something, because you guys watched him play. You should have heard them on the broadcast. They were raving about him. That skip pass that he had, where he found the shooter in the corner, like they were literally again the entire fourth quarter. Basically, it was a Neemias Queta show, and the broadcasters for that game were all over him. They were just like in love with him. Like, I can't believe how good this kid is. So, but go ahead, Brenden.
Yeah, and he's been a little bit of I think both Keon and Nemi don't love the word mentor when I've mentioned it, but I think that they've helped Colby and Jalen respectively. And, makes sense that it seems like Colby has been talking to Keon a little bit, and Slauson talking to Nemi. And I think they have similar styles, but I think when it comes to the rookies, you've seen both of them grow a little bit more comfortable throughout. Maybe the California Classic was, their first taste of this. It's only been like a little less than 2.5 weeks since these guys have gotten drafted. They've gone through a training camp. They had flew to Sacramento, get accustomed to learn some of their new teammates, coaches, front office members, introductory press conference, straight into a training camp. They've already played 2 games at Golden One Center and now played 2 games in Vegas. It's been less than 2.5 weeks. So I think that this has been a big adjustment for these guys as it would be for any rookies, but I think that we've seen both of them get a little bit more comfortable. I think Slauson in his first game in Vegas had some decent moments protecting the rim. With him, I've heard people be frustrated, and I just always say, like, guys, we're talking about the 54th pick here. This is very normal. And then I think Colby Jones, I mean, obviously he had a ridiculous game yesterday. He was the only one that was, I think, successfully aggressive on the offensive end. I think Keon and Kessler were trying, and then Keon eventually found his rhythm. Kessler, it never really, I think, fully clicked yesterday for him. But I think that Colby Jones, like, his touch is always ridiculous to me. That really stood out watching his tape at Xavier, and you continue to see it. He had one lefty and one finish yesterday that was just ridiculous. He's got great floaters. His three ball looks really good off the catch. He's a great rebounder. He just does a little bit of everything. It's kind of as advertised, and you've seen him get more comfortable. And I did think it was interesting yesterday post-game asking him about like what he sees as a rebounder, and he's reading the ball before it hits the rim. And you can tell he really is successful in grabbing boards on both ends of the floor. So I think seeing both of the rookies get a little bit more comfortable as time passes has stood out to me.
Sean, what would Dave Yeager say about those floaters?
He would tell him to stop doing them.
in the floaters?
Soft. He didn't like soft floaters. He wants you to finish at the rim. It's funny.
But Brenden nailed it. I mean, I've been impressed with Colby Jones a lot because of the fact of his comfort. He has just a tremendous feel for the game. Certainly there's areas of improvement and development that'll come, and I think it'll certainly happen at the ball handling and playmaking. Although it's not like he's terrible at it. I think that might be some of the deficiencies there. Maybe get a little bit more quick or a little bit faster on the reads, but for as quick as NBA ball is, he seems to have looked maybe the most comfortable out of anybody who's just doing this for the first time. I feel like you especially, and maybe it stands out to me more because he did go in the second round. I mean, Brenden just mentioned about how Slauson is the 54th pick. This is natural. Slauson looks like a deer in headlights. Like he just doesn't have a feel at all. Everything's coming 100 miles an hour, and any small progression for him will go so far because he'll be in Stockton. He'll be able to develop all those tools and kind of get a feel for it, and it'll come. With Colby, you can see what they love about him. You can see that no, this guy is a roster player, even if he was taken in the second round. His feel for the game, I feel, is tremendous. And what Brenden was talking about, what Colby said, reading rebound, that's what great rebounders do, and you wish all guys would do that. He blows me away with the way he can get in the lane, find the board, and then get out.
We were joking, Sean, that his answer when I said what is your mindset when rebounding is pretty much like, I just go and get the ball.
Get the ball.
It's not that hard, for him.
Exactly right. It's exactly right. And can you just picture? I mean, a guy who has that type of feel and that type of intelligence for basketball IQ, where could that track 3 years from now? What's that look like 3 years from now? And I don't like to make too much of a evaluation from a handful of summer league games, because again, I don't care if he's going out and scoring the ball. I don't care if he misses every shot he takes. The feel for the game, even in haphazard basketball environment, he has a feel for the game that's really, really impressive, and it's on the two-way. It's on both ends of the floor that he does it. I mean, certainly he's going to make mistakes, but this is the type of stuff that translates where there's so many people that'll put such an emphasis on scoring, but look at all the little things that this guy does that affects winning, that affects positivity and successful possessions. I mean, he's really been impressive. I can't say enough about him.
I'll also just add real quick that there's been a lot of positional versatility with him. He's playing 1 to 3.
Yeah.
There's times he's playing the point out there, and I talked to him about that a little bit. He said that's something that he didn't do that much at Xavier, but he's happy to get the opportunity. And you see him playing it at the 2 primarily, but when Keegan goes out after California Classic, he slots into that 3 spot in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I'd asked Luke about that because I said with Keegan, he now plays a different role without Keegan, as a lot of guys do. But and I was building that up to with Luke Laux, because with Kessler Edwards, it's like if there was somebody that's kind of underwhelmed, it's Kessler, because you kind of wanted to see different things from him. But I think they're putting him in different environments than what he's used to being in. And it'll be interesting to see how that changes over the next 2 games. And like they try to make him a scorer a lot, especially in transition, and some of it just doesn't go well. So I don't know what it is with Kessler yet, but hopefully he has a breakout game here.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Kessler needs De'Aaron Fox. He needs Domantas Sabonis. He needs a player that's on his team that's drawing a double team, so he has that extra little bit of space. Even if it's not a double team, even if his man is sagging off, just to give him that little bit of space, because the 3-point shot has not looked great. He had one game where he knocked him down really solid. He started 0 for 7 at the California Classic. Then he had, I think he was 3 for 6. He was okay. I think yesterday he was okay too. I think he had 2 3 balls, but the turnovers are bad. He can't take anybody off the dribble. Sean, you talked about, he doesn't finish with authority in transition. He tries to Euro step and uses length, and something Keon Ellis does too, which can be a little bit, again, Dave Yeager would be beside himself on that stuff. Just go to the rim and finish. I'm done with the playing around thing. But I think that he's a system player. He's not a freelance player. He's not a player who's going to be able to score on his own. And Colby Jones, he's not going to be an NBA point guard. He will not be your third point guard, in my opinion. And that's what at the California Classic, it was they're trying to test it to see how it looked, and it did not look good at all. They might spend a whole year in the G League trying to work through it. And same thing with Keon Ellis, trying to give Keon Ellis that little bit of positional versatility. But it's just not in them. It's not who they are as players. They're more of a 2-3 than a 1-2-3, even if they can defend at all 3 positions. Outside of the Kings guys, who else do you guys like? Is there anyone else you're just holy cow? I mean, Victor Wembanyama. I mean, I think we all had the same reaction in the first game. And again, did you guys watch? You guys were live, right? You guys went and watched him.
Yeah,
both.
Okay,
games.
So I think I want to say it was Fran Fraschilla that was calling the game. I think he did Victor Wembanyama a horrible disservice, because the first thing out of his mouth was he compared him to Ralph Sampson. And in that first game, Brenden probably has no idea who Ralph Sampson is, but Sean does.
Yeah.
He looked exactly like Ralph Sampson, but Kings Ralph Sampson, not Houston Rockets Ralph Sampson. He looked stiff. He looked slow. He looked like he was sinking too much. Everything was bad. And I thought that maybe the panic was partially because of the way he was presented. And so I thought it was kind of an interesting way that they he really looks like, and you're okay, Ralph Sampson was 7'3" and a stick figure like that, but they're 2 totally different era players. Sampson couldn't put the ball on the floor at all. But what are your thoughts? Because he was fun in game 2 and started to show some of the uniqueness that is him, but game 1 was a mess, and the ball handling is going to have to improve. A lot of things, he's going to have to get stronger. A lot of things have to change.
Yeah, I thought game 2 he was really, really good and looked like what you would expect Wembanyama to look like. There's a lot of blocks in there, which everybody makes a lot about his offense, but I think, and I get why, but this guy is changing the game defensively. I think that's one of his biggest skills, and you've seen that. And I think when it comes to game 1, there was just so much hype around it and so much talk about only him. And there's a lot of other guys on that Spurs team. Julian Champagnie was balling out. I know everybody saw that at the California Classic. Malachi Branham is really good. So there's other guys that I think it's I don't want to guess on his first name, but Banton, that came from Overtime Elite, the other big that they're playing alongside Wembanyama, has been
Barlow.
Dominic, thank you.
Dominic Barlow. I fell in love with that guy.
Yeah.
Like at the California Classic, he was spectacular. The first couple of games there in Vegas, he's been spectacular. And he's in the same situation Neemias is, where they had signed him to a 1-year 2-way. Like, how do you get Barlow on your roster? That's my question. If I'm the Kings, like, how, if you're looking for basically what would amount to a first-round pick, I mean, he's 20 years old. Holy cow. He's got all kinds of skills. 6'9", can shoot, the mid-range is spectacular. The defense is spectacular. His fight, like all of it. I'm sitting there like, wow, look at how well this kid looks with or without Victor, because he looked the same way in Sacramento. So he's one of the guys I have written down. Like, if, man, like, there are players here. There are players that you're watching that you're like, holy cow, if you can get your hands on that guy or this guy, pretty good stuff. But go ahead, Brenden.
Yeah, and I just kind of got not got the impression, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's an aspect of like, Wembanyama knows he has teammates and nobody's talking about his teammates. Like, I didn't feel like he was trying to be the star in game one. And I don't really have an issue with that. But I think his aggressiveness was different in game two. And there's nothing that's been new to me necessarily with Wembanyama, which is certainly not a bad thing because he was extremely hyped up for a good reason. Game two, he was truly phenomenal. There was one dunk that he threw down right on the side that Sean and I were standing on that we both were like, when we watched back the replay, we thought he was further than he was, but his length and reach is ridiculous. There was a time he walked past Sean and I at a hotel, and the size, like, we've been around tall NBA players. He's ridiculously tall. It's like another level. You guys would have, or Sean would have, different perspective with the amount of people he's been around, but like, that height is ridiculous even for the people you've been around, right, Sean?
James, we've been around Simbular, you know.
Yeah, but Sim, like, it's still, he doesn't have an abdominal muscle. Like,
no, he doesn't.
Like, core strength is like an oxymoron for him.
But like, I'm talking about just like incredibly large human beings, right? Like, and NFL, you see, just, you know, you stand by Trent Williams and you just go, how is that possible? Wembanyama is like, he's a attraction. Like, your eyes just go, what the hell is this? Like, he's 7'5", right? 7'5", and to have the dexterity that he does, the body control that he does is probably just, that's what's just jaw dropping. And I'm looking at him, and again, we've seen tall people before, but I've never, like, he makes me wonder. Here he is at his hotel, and it's like, how do you have a bed? Like, do you have a bed big enough for this guy? Like, this is.
Does he have to sit sleep catty corner, like, diagonally on the bed?
I don't know what they do, but those are questions that, like, my friends that don't really like cover sports, and the first time they see somebody like that and their jaw drops to the floor, it's like, how do they sleep? Like, they even had me wondering, like, how are they going to do that? But yeah, his body control is impressive, and I paid much more attention to him in the second game with the Trailblazers, and I did in that first game with the Hornets, mainly because the first game with the Hornets, I was more mesmerized by everyone else. I think the vibe of the arena, everyone being completely starstruck, the energy in that place was completely electric. And then you kind of, you know, compare that to the game against the Portland Trailblazers. Granted, it would have been really awesome if Scoot Henderson had played in that game, but even without him there, we were able to focus so much more detail on just Wembanyama and his basketball abilities, his temperament. And I think it was a little bit of a slow start. I think he got kind of pissed off. I think maybe someone got in his ear and kind of challenged him a little bit, because he became more aggressive and assertive than what you saw early on in that game. And yeah, he does some nice things. He does some really crazy things too. Like if you saw when he hit the three late in the game, and everyone's riled up, and here comes the Spurs, and they're about to, you know, close the gap, and then he gets 2 possessions later, and he's bringing it up the floor, and he just chucks. I looked at
the one-legged three.
It was a runner. It was like a runner in the lane, only he did it from the 3-point land. And I looked at it, I was like, what the hell was that? And
if that went in, the place would have exploded.
Oh my God. It was like one of the worst shots you've ever seen in your life. But yes, if it had gone in, what if. But to your point too, Brenden, like if you're putting together, and it's early because there's so many more games to play, but they will have a Vegas Summer League, all Vegas Summer League team and their MVP, of course, and there's a couple players that come to mind, and Julian Champagne's right there. I mean, he continues to play so well. I've been very, very impressed with the growth from Jabari Smith. Tari Eason was really awesome in that game. Was that
the first game
they played, Brenden? We watched that game the other day. Yeah,
Houston,
really great.
Portland. Yeah, that was the best game. And it actually made the following Wembanyama debut kind of disappointing because there was such a high to that game that Jabari hit that game winner.
Yeah, he's looked really great. And, Brandon Miller hasn't, he's probably been on the all disappointment team. But, that's okay. Again, like Summer League doesn't matter. He'll be able to knock down shots. He just needs to make sure he has a comfortability and makes the right plays and doesn't totally go out there and shit the bed. So, because you'll see that from time to time, but usually you won't see it from a guy who went second in the draft.
Yeah, the other guy that is it Kayanta George for Utah?
Keontae?
Maybe that's what it is. My goodness, he's been incredible. Like he's hitting everything. And then, man, I don't understand how Leonard Miller fell to the second round. I don't understand how Leonard Miller wasn't a top 10 pick in this year's draft. I'm confused by the whole thing. And then he's gone out and he's been spectacular. Like he's been really, really good.
I haven't been able to see him yet. I've been kicking myself. The other guy, and we're hoping to see him today, is Chet Holmgren, who's
he's been a baller.
That dude's got a dog in him. Like that dude is so competitive. And of course that's one of the fun things about last year's Summer League compared to this year, where it's like, all right, yeah, you got Keegan Murray on your team, and he gets to go up in like success. He gets to play all the top picks. He played Smith, he played Holmgren, and he played Banchero. And then he had obviously the crazy thrilling best Summer League game ever last year, the game-winning shot. But then you compare that to this year, and it's like every Kings matchup is like a dud. You're not really going up against any of those teams that you're like, oh, I really want to see this guy, I really want to see that guy. So, and screw the schedulers who put every Kings game at 7:30 at night, basically.
Agreed.
It's terrible.
I will say on Leonard Miller, he seems to be, just from talking to people here, like extremely polarizing. People either love him or just are not a believer. And there's not really a gray area. I fall into the former. I'm a believer, and I think that he's showing it. The one other guy I will also shout out is specifically just for one sequence was Andre Jackson Jr. with the Milwaukee Bucks. He had back-to-back chase down blocks. I want to say it was on Peyton Watson, but I could be wrong with that, from Denver. But he had back-to-back chase down blocks, and that place got super excited.
Yeah. Okay, so Brenden, like one of your things that you need to do on your last day, try to go meet Taco Fall. Because if you want to see the biggest human being that you probably, like, I think the only other person I think that's remotely close in my book was Yao. Like, Yao was a huge man, but, Boban's a big man too. You need to go.
Boban's very big.
Meet Taco Fall, because Taco Fall is like, what is he, 7'5", 7'6", but he's like 2 of Victor Wembanyama wide. Like he is a huge, huge man. And like, it reminded me, like when I first started covering the team and the Kings made the Rudy Gay trade, they brought in Aaron Gray as part of that trade. Aaron Gray looked like Grizzly Adams. And he was like, you're talking about a dude who was so wide he had to turn sideways to go through doorways. And I don't mean like fat. I mean, his shoulders were that broad. He wasn't just tall. He was a tremendously huge human being. And so Taco Fall, you'll be like, oh my gosh, like that is one of the biggest people you'll ever see in your entire life. Like, anyway. Okay. We're getting close to wrapping up here. We'll do the business of basketball. So the business of basketball. I know that there's been a lot of panic because the Kings didn't like go out and spend all their cap space like crazy people, and everyone's a little bit like, what exactly were they doing here? They've been raked over the coals by some media members for I don't know why, because I mean, I think their offseason is slightly polarizing. But do you guys think they're done? Do you think there's something else like we're not seeing? They've got, again, they've got 2 roster spaces open. The buzz around like a Pascal Siakam trade. And I'm not saying for the Sacramento Kings, but like that buzz is going. The Damian Lillard buzz is going again. Do you think that they get involved in something? Where you think they're at right now with their team, and do you think that they're set outside of maybe a young player addition or just a veteran that might, take a flyer on a guy like Darius Baisley or something?
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, you got some roster spots left. I think they're going to be rather tertiary moves and smaller moves. I think there's potential for them to go out and get something that they truly need, and could be something that helps the rotation. But I just think when it comes to like how big of a splash will it be, I think it's going to be rather a ripple. I don't think it's going to be some like cannonball or anything like that. But again, there's a lot of offseason left, and to say you're predicting, obviously you're not. I don't see them being able to attach themselves to a Dame trade or James Harden trade if that comes to be, or anything that possibly the Clippers may do, if at all. I still tend to think that the Clippers are probably still the front runner in trying to land James Harden if that happens. But we'll see. And I think I just don't. I think a lot of times trades are the best way for the Kings to get better. But I just don't see anything out there right now. But they're going to keep their ear to the ground and see if they can significantly improve their team. But I think this is for people who are disappointed that it's a run it back. I wouldn't look at it like that. But hey, man, you got third in the West, and while everyone around you got better, I feel like the Kings did as well. I think the Duarte pickup is pretty fantastic. I think that upgrades the Terrence Davis position that they had into somebody that can come out here and play defense, which is much needed. And he's capable of hitting a shot. I think that last year was a bit of an anomaly because of the ankle injury, and obviously if Sasha Vezenkov can be anything like he was in Europe, I think that will be, especially playing alongside a guy like Domantas Sabonis, where the offense is so equal opportunity. I think you're going to be able to pick up right where you left off and upgrade both of those areas of that you did get better. And it's like, okay, well, how does that affect the rotation? That'll be up to Mike Brown to figure out. But I think where the Kings are going to make their biggest possibility of splash, if you will be in season, possible trade deadline, something like that. I think the offseason will be rather just, we got to fill the roster, get this team ready for training camp, and then off they go.
Yeah, I think pretty much the same. I mean, I think that they did get better with depth, and literally replaced these guys with the exact same numbers. Sasha Vezenkov is taking Mezzi's 7, and Chris Duarte is taking Terrence Davis's number 3. And I think both of those are improvements. I think the other thing, I think there's 2 things in my mind that I've got the impression they're sort of betting on. And one of them is that they're going to be better on defense last year because they showed or next year because they showed they could be in the playoffs. And they were a much better team, and a big theme. I mean, we've heard the word physicality from Luke Laux. I can't tell you how many times. And he always is mentioning it in the way of physicality is important right now because that's the big thing for our team next season on both ends of the floor. But it starts right now, and that we need to be a much more physical team is what you hear from Luke a lot. And I think that they believe they can be better on defense because they showed they can be throughout the course of the postseason. I don't know how much I buy into that because I think it's hard to play with that level of physicality for 82 games, but I think that's what they're hoping for. And then the other thing is internal improvement. Like Keegan Murray's the obvious one, right? We've seen Keegan Murray seemingly take a jump. There's intriguing off the dribble stuff. The 41 he had in summer league, like And it's not in the same way that he was getting his buckets last year. Like, there is still the movement threes, catch and shoot threes. He's knocking them down, but he's taking a dribble or two and making a play. He's dunking on people at the rim. So I think you're betting on that internal improvement, but I think it goes beyond that. I don't think like Harrison Barnes and Alex Len are the only guys 30 plus on this team. You're talking about De'Aaron Fox is 25, so is Malik Monk. Kevin Huerter and Davion Mitchell are both 24. Like, there is still room for internal improvement for some of these other guys. Domantas Sabonis is 27, and so is like Sasha Trey Lyles. Chris Duarte is 26. I'm not saying all these guys improve, but say you get some improvement as you would expect from the guys of Keegan Murray and Davion Mitchell, and then one of the other ones takes a little bit of a jump. Like, I think you're a decently better team.
Yeah, I think so too, especially the Keegan thing. I think they are expecting Keegan to take this monumental leap, and we continue to hear like the Kings feel like what we saw in Summer League is more of who he is long term. Like that's who they want him to be. That's who they're going to push him to be, is like a top tier, like spectacular player. But I think, Brenden, to your point, if you can get Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter to take a leap where they don't do more statistically, but they smooth out the like peaks and valleys of last season by coming in better shape and more ready to play the role that they're going to be in, I think that you can improve greatly. If Kevin Huerter can go between 38 and 43% like throughout the season, as opposed to, shooting 50% and then 23% and then 50%. And the same with Malik. Malik had a 6-week stretch where like he couldn't hit anything. And those guys lost their legs for portions of the season. And it's because their roles had changed. What was needed from them was different. And I expect them to be more ready, especially after Monk had that. I think both Monk and Huerter for the playoffs were really important for them, but for completely different reasons. I think Monk allowed himself to be the player he can be moving forward. And I think Kevin had struggled and doesn't want to see that again. And so you're going to see both players motivated, but for different reasons. So I think that there is a ton of improvement. And I don't think that they're going to do anything crazy, but I do think that they're going to be waiting in the wings in case something major does pop up that does help them get over the hump. If we'll just keep saying it, if OG Anunoby becomes someone who's available again, I think that the Kings might, or available for the first time before he hits free agency this next summer, I think the Kings are going to be someone who's ready to attack that situation. And so people know, like, any player they acquire in the offseason, they can't trade until December 15th, until after December 15th. So that goes for like Sasha Zinkov. And that's just free agent acquisitions. And then your own free agent, like your extension guys, I think you have to keep their contracts for 6 months. So like before the trade deadline, you'll have the access to players that you signed that were your own, whether it be like Harrison Barnes or Trey Lyles. If you choose to move on from those guys, you can actually trade them during this season. You just have to wait 6 months from the point that they sign their contract. So a little bit there. And then lastly, I want to point out, I know there's been a lot of like people panic because they look at the salary cap and they think, oh, there's no way they're going to be able to retain Malik Monk after this season. And I want to clarify to make sure people understand that Malik Monk's contract, he has just like what Trey Lyles had and what Rashawn Holmes had before, which are early bird rights. And early bird rights, I think there's a lot of confusion about what they are, because the two players that we've seen go through the early bird process were both players that made a lot less salary than what you would expect. So like Trey Lyles made $2.6 million last year, and Rashawn Holmes 3 years ago made $5 million, right? And so the way the early bird works is it's either 105%, your starting salary is 105% of the league average salary, which again, this year is probably around like $12.2 million. That's what the maximum you could offer Malik Monk. And if that's the case, you're in trouble, because Malik Monk is probably going to make a lot more than $12 million his next contract. But the other thing with the early bird rights, is it's either or. It's either 105%, which really works for guys like Trey Lyles or Rashawn Holmes, because you can't bump their salary that much, or it's 175% of what you made in your previous final year of your contract. So Malik Monk is eligible for a $17.4 million starting salary next season, after this season. So like when they get to next summer, if they want to keep him on on his early bird rights, they can go up to 17.4 starting salary with 8% raises. Like he could make up to a 4-year, $78.4 million contract. So you have the option to keep Malik Monk, most likely, if you want to keep him. And then like, you don't have to go all the way up to that number. If the Kings want to offer him like a $14 million, $15 million a year deal, like you're going to have the option to do that, because he will fall under that 175% of his max contract from the previous year in the early bird rights. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
17 is plenty for Malik.
So I think it definitely clears like a big hurdle though for the Kings if they want to keep this group together. And he's talented. I mean, you don't want to lose talent. You don't want to. You may not have a replacement for what he brings to the table. And the last thing I'll mention with that is I'll come back to the fact that the Kings not only traded $12 million in Rashawn Holmes' salary for this season, but $12.9 million for next season. And I have them at like 147, 149 million, depending on like young player stuff, in dedicated salary for next season. And that's a big difference if you got to stack on that $13 million for Rashawn Holmes and pushes your team salary up to like 172 million. And that's before you go and try to chase Malik Monk. Now you're down way lower, and you can actually 160. Sorry. Now you're way down around 147, 150 million for next year. And so Malik Monk contract would hurt, but you could still fit it in and still be well under the luxury tax, well under the apron and all that stuff. Cool. Sweet. Do we have any final thoughts?
Sean won't do it himself, so I'll say it. Anybody that works for Hurley that's listening, this man needs a sponsorship. It's ridiculous. I assumed we were looking at the same 2 or 3 Hurley hats all the time. He brought at least 5 to Vegas, so I can only imagine how many are at home. This man needs a Hurley sponsorship.
Oh,
do you have a bag filled with Hurley hats that you travel with, like your hat bag?
No, I think it makes it way into the suitcase area. Just put them in the corner, and they keep their little.
Nobody puts Sean's Hurley hats in the corner.
So silly. The Sphere is amazing. I've never been inside it, but you're driving around town and you see this building lit up, and I've never seen anything like it. And it moves and rotates like a big LED screen, and it's owned by the guy that owns the Knicks, James Dolan, MSG. So if you happen to be flying over Vegas or in Vegas, you look over at that big Sphere thing that U2 is going to open and play like 20 shows. It's something. I'm literally looking at it outside my window right now, and we're recording this. It's 2:47 in the afternoon, and it's lit up, and it's stayed lit up because I haven't seen it lit up during the day, and it's not rotating or anything, but it has like a blue and purple color to it. I don't know what kind of design it is, but they've turned it into an eyeball, a basketball, a thing with Summer League all over it. It's very unusual, but it's super cool.
I'm going to have to check that out, especially, isn't it like a 50,000 seat arena inside? Something crazy?
19, I believe it is.
19, okay. I thought it was way bigger.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder large. What it's like inside. Like, what exactly is it going to look like? Because the LED screens are all on the outside. What's on the inside?
According to my Uber driver, they will not have the same visuals on the inside.
Well, my experience with Uber drivers in Las Vegas is they all have 5 stars or 4.99 ratings, and they're all really good. Like, Vegas is where people go to make money as Uber drivers. A lot of people drive to Vegas from LA just for the weekend to make a ton of money as Uber drivers and then go home, because you can make a couple of $1,000 in a weekend. Yeah,
I believe it.
There's some interesting Uber drivers out here. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. My final thoughts for the day. Go find a body of water to swim in because it's going to be hot. Be careful this week. It's
Not a
gonna be
river, though.
Not a river. Don't go in the river. But it's going to be 108 this weekend. Like that's
Is it?
too. Yeah, oh yeah.
When?
I don't know. Like that's what the ramp up is supposed to be nuts the whole weekend, and then it's supposed to be massive heat wave for like a week. So water your garden. Yeah, you might just need to come up and hang out on a boat. Yeah, you guys are welcome. You guys come up and hang out on the boat. Not everyone's welcome, but Sean and Brenden are welcome to come up and hang out on the boat.
So I'm getting out of Vegas at the right time then, because it hasn't been terrible, right, Brent? I mean, it's been like 105. Today's a little warmer, but like Friday when I get out of here, it'll be 112, and then it goes to 115, 118, 117 in the next few days. So that must mean Sacramento is heating up, yeah?
Yeah, Sacramento is going to be scorching hot. It's going to be uncomfortable.
So I'm bringing the heat back to Sacramento.
You're bringing the heat. Outside of that, let's see. I went and saw Toad the Wet Sprocket at the Crest on Saturday night. Man, the Crest is
explain that one to Brenden.
Toad the Wet Sprocket is a band from the early 90s and all the way through the 90s. They were big. They had maybe 3 or 4 pretty solid hits. They toured with Hootie and the Blowfish when Hootie was big, before Darius Rucker became a country singer.
Hootie's still big. They came back.
Actually, and if you ever my tambourine behind me is Toad the Wet Sprocket. It's my Toad tambourine. So
there was a tambourine behind you.
It's autographed by Toad. I was at the Horde Festival years ago and they signed it. Or Bridge School, but no, it was Horde Festival, not the Bridge School. Anyway, they were cool. And the Crest really is a spectacular venue. So Brenden, I don't know if you've been to the Crest, but it's right downtown. It's right across from. Is Pizza Rock still there? I don't know if Pizza Rock's still there.
Well, it's on K Street there. You got Oishi over there. It's right across from Oishi.
Probably about 5 or 6 blocks away from the arena. But absolutely spectacular, the venue. So if there's ever a concert or some sort of weird festival, I used to go to, when I was young, the Sick and Twisted Festival of Animation there, which was a blast.
It's usually movies they have there, yeah?
They have movies there now too, yeah. But they have some, I think they have Gremlins 1 and 2, I think, playing at some point. Which Gremlins, just so Brenden knows, was a film starring
furry creatures. Yeah,
with furry creatures that you could not allow to get wet or leave in direct sunlight, or bad things happened.
Or feed after midnight.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, you can't feed them after midnight. So
Brenden, bullying me again.
Have you seen Gremlins? You know what a gremlin is, right? No?
I know of a gremlin. I've probably called people gremlins before, but I've never seen a movie.
Huh.
Yeah,
no.
We're not going to go with who. We're not going to go. No, I don't think so.
Put it on your list. Put it on your list. Okay. I think that's going to do it. If you're still watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, go and give us a rating and review if you don't mind. Those things help the algorithm that is life at this point on the interwebs. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber. We will have a virtual happy hour coming up. I haven't set a date yet, but I would say sometime in the next 2 weeks. We've been busy with Summer League and all this other stuff that's been going on. It's really difficult to schedule times when everyone is moving in different directions. But hopefully we'll figure that one out, especially later in the week, early next week. We'll have another pod. So thanks for joining us here on the Kings Beat for Fox 40's Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We'll see you soon.